The unlifted blade. The sun was setting behind the red mountains of Zenthra. Golden dust floated in the air, glowing softly as it fell across the ancient temple. In the center of the stone chamber stood a single object, an enormous sword, buried deep into the ground. Its blade shimmered with a strange light, but no one had ever seen it move. No alien had ever lifted it, not in 1,000 years. Around the sword, glowing alien runes marked the floor. The old legends called it the Varkon Edge, a weapon left by the gods. Only the one worthy of the stars could lift it. And so, the strongest warriors came every year, giants, beasts, warlords, and champions. They all failed. No one knew why. Today, another crowd had gathered, not because of a champion. No. Today, the crowd came to laugh. A human had arrived. His name was Marcus Rayne. He was tall, thin, with dusty brown hair and a tired face. His clothes were torn from travel. His ship had crashed in the desert nearby, and he had walked into the city of Harak by mistake, looking only for help. Instead, the aliens dragged him to the temple, calling him entertainment. "Let's see the soft creature try," one alien hissed, baring sharp teeth. "He will cry when he touches it." Another laughed. Marcus said nothing. He stood quietly, in front of the sword, staring at it. Something about it pulled him forward. He didn't understand why, but it felt familiar. At the edge of the crowd stood High Priestess Alira, watching from a tall platform. Her skin was blue, her eyes glowing white. She had lived over 200 years and seen many champions fail. But this human felt different. Her long fingers tapped her staff as she whispered to her guard, "Let him try." The crowd stepped back. The air grew still. Marcus walked forward slowly. He stopped at the edge of the glowing circle around the sword. For a moment he hesitated. Then, he stepped in. Nothing happened. The crowd chuckled again. One alien tossed a stone at him, but the second Marcus placed his hand on the sword's handle. Everything changed. A deep hum echoed through the chamber. The runes on the floor glowed brighter, turning from blue to gold. A wind burst from nowhere, blowing dust in all directions. The ground trembled, the crowd gasped. Some backed away. Marcus felt a strange energy rise in his chest. Images flashed in his mind. Flames, stars, warriors in armor, and a woman holding the same sword in her hands long ago. He pulled. The sword didn't move, but it sang. A soft ringing sound, like a bell underwater, filled the air. The glow around Marcus grew stronger. He dropped the sword in shock and stepped back, breathing hard. "What was that?" he whispered. The High Priestess stood frozen. "This has never happened," she said to herself. "The sword has never reacted before." Aliens whispered in fear. Some called it a trick. Others ran from the temple, afraid. Marcus stood still, confused and shaken. His fingers still tingled from the energy. He looked around, unsure if he had done something wrong. He wasn't trying to become a hero. He just wanted to leave this place. Then, a young alien girl with soft green skin stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was Zira, a temple cleaner. She stared at Marcus with wide eyes and whispered, "It chose you." Marcus turned to her. "What do you mean?" She pointed at the glowing symbols. "The sword is alive. It knows who you are." Marcus shook his head. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix old ships. I'm not special." Zira smiled. "You must be. The sword thinks so." Behind them, the High Priestess walked down from her platform. She stopped in front of Marcus and studied him. "Human," she said slowly. "Where are you from?" "Earth," he replied. Her eyes widened. "Earth, the lost flame." She turned and looked at the sword again. "The last time it glowed," she whispered, "was in the time of the Forgotten War, when humans and gods stood side by side." Marcus didn't understand, but he felt it. Deep in his chest, the sword was calling him. Not for battle, but for something greater, The high priestess turned back to her guards. Take him to the archives. I want every record of humans and the Varkon Edge searched. Now. As Marcus was led away, he looked back at the sword one last time. It still glowed for him, and somewhere far above in the cold dark of space, something ancient had begun to awaken, laughter of the strong. The next morning, the temple doors were guarded by twice as many soldiers. Word had spread fast across the city of Harak. The impossible had happened. The ancient sword, untouched for 1,000 years, had reacted to a human. Alien nobles, warriors, and scholars filled the upper balconies. Some came to witness a miracle, others came to laugh again. He didn't lift it, one noble scoffed. It only hummed. A spark doesn't make him chosen, another said. Just lucky. Down below, Marcus Rayne stood once more before the sword. His face was calm, but his heart beat fast. He had barely slept. The visions from yesterday still echoed in his mind. Warriors in armor, fire, stars, a war. The sword had shown him something, but what did it mean? The crowd roared with laughter again as he stepped closer. Let's see if the weakling wants to dance with the gods again. He'll cry when it shocks him. High Priestess Alira said nothing. She stood with her arms crossed, eyes locked on Marcus. Something about him had unsettled her. The way the sword responded, it was ancient power, not magic, not luck. Something deeper, and it was only triggered by him. Marcus ignored the voices. He stepped into the glowing circle again. The runes, cold since dawn, lit up instantly under his feet. The laughter stopped. Every alien in the chamber held their breath. Marcus reached for the hilt. This time, the sword whispered. It wasn't sound. It wasn't language, it was feeling. Not yet. Prove you're more than hands. Marcus's grip loosened. He backed away, stunned. Suddenly, a large figure leapt from the side of the chamber. It was General Kurak, a battle-hardened alien commander, with armor made of jagged bone and metal. His horns curled like blades and his eyes glowed orange. I've had enough of this joke, he roared. Let me show you what true power is. He marched toward the sword and shoved Marcus aside. Watch closely, human. This is what a warrior looks like. Kurak grabbed the hilt with both hands. Veins bulged along his thick arms. His body shook as he pulled. Nothing happened. He growled, roared, pulled harder. Still, the blade didn't move. Instead, the runes beneath him turned black. A dark pulse of energy shot up his arms. Kurak screamed in pain and was thrown backward, into the wall, smashing stone. The crowd gasped. Priestess Alira raised her staff. Enough, she shouted. The sword chooses. We do not force it. Guards rushed to help Kurak, but he pushed them away, growling curses as he limped out of the hall. All eyes turned to Marcus again, but he was no longer near the sword. He had walked to the wall, where a mural was carved in stone, old and dusty, mostly ignored. Zira, the young alien girl from before, joined him quietly. You see it too? She asked. Marcus nodded. This symbol. He pointed to a circle with a star inside it. It's from Earth. Very old Earth. She blinked. How do you know? I've seen it in museums. This sword, it's not alien. Zira touched the mural gently. What if this planet once belonged to humans long ago? Marcus didn't answer. Behind them, Alira approached. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Who are you, really, Marcus Rayne? I told you, he said. Just a mechanic, I crashed here by mistake. No, she said, eyes narrowed. Mistakes don't wake gods. Suddenly, the sword let out a soft chime. A second pulse. The circle glowed gold again. But Marcus hadn't touched it. It was reacting to his presence. Zira smiled. It wants you to try again. Marcus looked at the hilt. His hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from wonder. He stepped forward. The moment he crossed the rune circle, the chamber grew silent again. This time, when he touched the sword, he didn't try to lift it. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Why me?" The sword responded not with words but with images, this time clearer than before. A young human standing in fire, alien gods surrounding him, a war-torn galaxy, the sword rising from the ashes. A promise made by forgotten ancestors. Only the one who fights not for power but for peace shall awaken the blade. Marcus opened his eyes. His grip relaxed. He let go of the hilt. The glow faded, but the runes stayed warm. "I'm not ready," Marcus said softly. He turned and walked away. The alien stared in confusion. He didn't even try to lift it. Someone shouted, "Coward!" yelled another, but Alira understood. So did the sword. Secrets buried in stone. The sun had not yet risen, but Marcus Rayne was already awake. He stood alone in the cold halls of the temple, staring at the massive stone wall behind the sword. Its surface was covered in carvings so old that even the alien scholars avoided them. Dust and shadow hid most of the images. But now Marcus looked with new eyes, because one of the symbols, half buried and cracked, was clearly not alien. It was Earth's, a circle with 3 wings and 7 stars, the lost emblem of the first, human stellar fleet. He gently wiped away the dust, revealing more details. Ships, not alien in shape, but human. Soldiers in armor. And one figure, taller than the rest, holding a glowing sword, just like the Varkan edge. This place was not just ancient. It had once been human. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed. Zira had arrived carrying a dim lantern. "You didn't sleep again," she said gently. Marcus nodded. "This planet, it's hiding something. Something about Earth, our past, our people." Zira tilted her head. "But Earth is far from here." "No," Marcus replied. "But maybe we were here long ago, before history forgot." She watched as Marcus traced the carvings with his fingers. "The sword is part of that past," he whispered. "It's not just a weapon, it remembers." Suddenly a deep rumble came from the floor beneath them. The temple shook. A small section of the wall behind the carving slid open, revealing a hidden passage, dark and untouched for centuries. Marcus and Zira exchanged a look. Without a word, they entered. The hidden passage was narrow and filled with stale air. Symbols lined the walls, many unfamiliar, but some were human. Very old. Very strange. The deeper they walked, the more intense the air felt. Heavy, like something ancient was watching them. They reached a chamber lit by faint blue crystals growing out of the walls. In the center lay a coffin made of glass and steel, half covered in vines. Inside, it rested the remains of a human woman. Pale, still, dressed in battle armor that matched the mural above. Clutched in her hands was a smaller version of the Varkan edge. Zira gasped. "Is she from Earth?" Marcus nodded, stunned. "She's wearing the mark of the First Fleet. She's one of ours. But this armor, this tech, it's thousands of years old." He leaned closer. "Her nameplate says Commander Alara Rayne." Zira blinked. "Rayne?" Marcus froze. "That's my last name." He stared at the woman's face. Though faded by time, there was something hauntingly familiar. The shape of her nose, her jawline. She could be my ancestor. Zira stepped back, whispering, "Maybe the sword didn't choose you by mistake. Maybe it called you home." Before Marcus could respond, the crystals in the room began to glow brighter. The sword inside the coffin pulsed once and released a wave of light into Marcus's chest. His eyes rolled back, and the visions returned. This time, he stood in another body. Not his own. He saw stars burning across the sky, ships exploding in battle, planets torn apart, a great war, humans and ancient aliens united against a monstrous force known only as the Voidkin. In the center of it all, the same sword, the Varkan edge. He saw Commander Alara fighting beside gods, lifting the sword high. She shouted, The blade must survive even if we don't. Then, silence. The vision ended. Marcus dropped to his knees, gasping for breath. Zero rushed to him. Are you okay? He nodded slowly. I saw it. The war. The truth. The sword wasn't left here by aliens. It was hidden here by humans. He stood up and looked at the coffin again. Alara didn't die in battle. She came here to hide the blade, to keep it safe for someone like me. Zira's eyes were wide with awe. Then you are part of a forgotten legacy. Marcus touched the coffin gently. And now it's waking up again, which means something terrible is coming back. Suddenly alarms echoed through the temple above. Zira turned pale. That sound. It means someone's broken the outer gates. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Someone doesn't want me learning the truth. He looked at the sword one last time. But it's too late. I remember now. The alien rebellion. The sacred bells of the Temple of Trials rang wildly. Outside, smoke rose into the pink sky as alien soldiers rushed through the marble streets. Horns blasted warnings. People screamed and scattered. The city of Herak was under attack. But it wasn't an invasion from the stars. It was a coup. General Rakal the Iron Fang, shamed in front of the sword, had returned. Not with apologies, but with an army. Thousands of armored warriors marched behind him, their weapons glowing red with fury. Rakal rode at the front on a six-legged beast, his face twisted with rage. He roared loud enough for the mountains to shake. No human will claim our destiny. Inside the temple, Marcus and Zira ran up from the secret chamber. High Priestess Alira met them in the great hall, her guards ready for battle. He's broken through the gates, she said sharply. And he's coming for the sword. Marcus clenched his fists. He knows the sword reacted to me. Alira nodded. And he fears it. But why? Zira asked. The priestess turned to her. Because if the sword accepts a human, it means the legends were wrong, that our people are not the chosen ones. Marcus looked toward the chamber doors. He'd rather burn the city than let a human lift it. Suddenly, a deafening crash shook the temple walls. The great bronze doors split open. Rakal stormed in with his elite warriors, blades drawn, energy shields buzzing. Step aside, he growled. I claim the sword by blood and right. Alira raised her staff. You have no right here. But Rakal snarled. Then you are no longer High Priestess. With a flick of his wrist, his soldiers grabbed Alira and the other priests. Chaos broke out. Zira was pulled away, screaming. Marcus reached for her but was struck in the back by a stun blast and dropped to the ground, dazed. When he woke, the temple was in ruins. Fires burned in the halls. Statues had been toppled. The golden rune circle around the sword was blackened, torn by blasts. The sword itself remained untouched, but surrounded by Rakal's best guards. Zira was locked in a cage near the altar, bruised but alive. Alira was nowhere to be seen. Marcus crawled behind a fallen pillar, wincing as he breathed. His body ached, but his mind was sharp. He heard Rakal shouting at his soldiers, I want it destroyed, the warlord barked. If I can't lift it, then no one will. A younger soldier hesitated. Buddy, it's sacred. Rakal struck him down. It is nothing if it bows to a human. Marcus stared at the sword. It stood silently, as if waiting. He closed his eyes. Not for strength, not for power, but to protect. That was what the visions had shown him. He looked to Zira, then to the chained guards, then at the sword. He had no weapons, no armor, no army, but he had will. Moving, quickly and quietly, Marcus picked up a broken rod from the ground and crept along the fallen columns. One by one, he knocked out the guards with stealth and speed. Not killing, just disabling. He reached Zira's cage and smashed the lock. Are you insane? She whispered. Yes, he grinned, but just enough. He tossed her a guard's weapon. We're taking the temple back. Zira's eyes shined with hope. You really believe the sword chose you? I believe it doesn't care who's strongest, Marcus said. It cares who stands when no one else will. Together they moved through the shadows, freeing Alira and the others. A new plan formed. 10 minutes later, Marcus stood alone in the center of the hall. He stepped back into the golden circle. Rakal saw him and laughed. "You again? You've come to die in front of everyone?" Marcus didn't respond. He just gripped the hilt. The sword began to glow, not with gold, but with blue fire. The entire temple lit up. The carvings on the walls shimmered. Suddenly, all the shackles in the room shattered. Alira and the guards broke free. Zira blasted the cages. The people of the temple rose up. Rakal screamed, "Stop him! Stop the human!" But it was too late. With a roar of ancient light, the sword responded. Marcus pulled and the blade lifted. The ground shook. A beam of light burst through the ceiling. The runes turned to flames of pure color. The people fell silent. Even Rakal froze. Marcus held the sword high. "I didn't come here to conquer," he said. "I came here to protect what matters." And in that moment, every being in the temple knew. The sword had finally chosen. The trial of worth. The sword burned in. Marcus's hands, not with heat, but with memory. The moment he lifted it, time felt strange. The world blurred. The temple, the fire, the soldiers, all faded. He wasn't standing in the Hall of Trials anymore. He stood on a glass-like platform, floating in an endless dark sky filled with stars. A voice echoed around him, not in his ears, but inside his mind. Strength is not enough. A glowing path appeared ahead of him, made of light and mist. On both sides, space twisted like water. Far away, shapes moved, shadows from another time. Marcus took a breath and stepped forward. This was not just a test of power. This was the sword's true trial. His first step brought him into a memory, not his own. He stood in a burning city. Alien buildings crumbled. Children screamed. Soldiers ran in panic. In the middle stood a tall warrior, holding the Varkon edge. It was Commander Alara Rayne, the woman from the coffin. She looked exactly like Marcus, but older, stronger, and she was fighting alone. "Run!" she shouted to the last survivors. She turned and stared at Marcus, but did not see him. He was just a ghost in this vision. "I'll hold them off," she whispered. A monstrous beast made of smoke and claws rose from the fire. Alara didn't scream. She charged forward. The memory froze. The sword's voice returned. "Will you sacrifice for others, even if it costs everything?" Marcus answered without fear. "Yes." The path lit up again. The next step took him to a different place, a spaceship's interior, damaged, lights flickering. Inside, two men fought. One was clearly a younger Marcus, angrier, louder. The other was his brother Eli. "I had no choice," younger Marcus shouted. "You left me behind," Eli shouted back. "You saved the ship, but you left your crew to die." Marcus froze. This memory was his. He remembered the moment. The war, the escape, the guilt. He looked at his younger self, ashamed. The sword whispered again. "Can you forgive yourself, or will you stay trapped by regret?" Marcus closed his eyes. "I did what I thought was right, but I never stopped hurting." He looked at Eli and whispered, "I'm sorry." The memory faded. The path lit again. Now he stood in the cold silence of space, alone. Stars blinked in the blackness. No memories here, no voices, only silence. Then, a child's cry echoed. He turned. Floating in the dark was a small alien girl, Zira, much younger, crying, lost. Her body flickered like she wasn't real. "Help me," she cried. Marcus reached out but couldn't touch her. The sword's voice returned. "Not all can be saved. Can you carry the pain and still move forward?" Tears stung Marcus's eyes. He reached out again. "I'll never stop trying." Even when the girl faded into light, he stood tall. The sword pulsed in his hands. The trial was near its end. Then came the final vision. Marcus stood on a battlefield. Thousands of aliens, both noble and evil, stood before him. Behind him, Earth, burning, fragile. A choice appeared in front of him: power or peace, control or compassion. A voice asked, "Will you rule with fear or lead with hope?" Marcus dropped the blade to his side. "I'm not a king," he said. "I'm just someone who doesn't give up." The battlefield vanished. Light exploded around him. The sword accepted him completely. He opened his eyes back in the real world. But the temple had changed. Now golden vines of energy wrapped around its walls. The runes glowed with ancient strength. The blade no longer looked like metal. It shimmered like living flame in Marcus's hands. Alira stepped back in awe. Zira ran to him, eyes wide. "What happened?" Marcus looked at the sword. "I passed. Not by being strong, but by remembering who I am." Outside, thunder rumbled. The Voidkin, the ancient enemies from his visions, were coming again. But this time the sword was ready. And so was he. Rise of the human blade. The city of Harak held its breath. The skies above darkened, not with clouds, but with shadows. Enormous alien warships, black and spiked like the bones of a dead god, blocked out the sun. The Voidkin had returned. Citizens hid in caves and temples. Soldiers took up old weapons. Children wept quietly as the ground trembled beneath their feet. But in the center of it all stood a human with a sword of fire, Marcus Rayne. He didn't wear armor. He didn't have an army. But in his hand, the ancient blade Varkon edge glowed, with energy that hadn't been seen for thousands of years. By his side stood Zira, and behind him, the once captive high priestess Alira. Her voice rang out across the broken temple steps. "Let the galaxy witness this moment," she declared. "The sword has chosen, not a warlord, not a beast, but a human." The crowd, broken and afraid just hours ago, began to rise to their feet. One by one, they stood behind Marcus. Not with weapons, with hope. From the skies, a Voidkin commander beamed down in a streak of black lightning. His form was monstrous. Half shadow, half metal, his face a mask of screaming mouths. "You carry the blade of Alara," the creature hissed. "It belongs to us now." Marcus held the sword tight. "You took her life. You won't take her memory." The commander laughed like cracking glass. "You are nothing, a flesh bag, a failed species. I'm still standing," Marcus replied. "And that sword still burns." With no warning, the Voidkin charged. A flash of blackened fire collided with golden light as Marcus raised the blade to block. The impact shook the ground, but Marcus did not fall. The crowd gasped. Then Marcus did something no one expected. He pushed back. With a roar, Marcus sent a wave of burning energy from the sword's edge. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a memory, a protector, a promise. The Voidkin reeled backward, howling in fury. "You think a human can stop the storm?" it shrieked. "No," Marcus said, "but maybe I can light the first torch." As the sword shined brighter, the carvings around the temple began to rise, literally. Stone warriors, shaped like ancient humans and aliens alike, broke free from the walls. Energy filled their hollow forms. Alira gasped. "They are the guardians of the first flame," Zira whispered. "They're waking up because of you." Dozens of glowing protectors lined up beside Marcus. The crowd behind him roared, no longer in fear but in unity. Together they marched through the broken gates of Harak, toward the landing fields, where hundreds of Voidkin soldiers were deploying. The first real battle began there. Marcus didn't lead like a general barking orders. He fought like a shield protecting the weak. Where Voidkin claws tore through buildings, he stood in their path. Where flames burned the streets, the sword's energy formed glowing barriers. He saved children trapped under rubble. He lifted fallen warriors to their feet. He inspired. Even the alien soldiers who once mocked him now followed his steps. In the heart of the battlefield, Marcus faced the Voidkin commander again. You don't belong in this age, the creature shouted. You are from a forgotten past. Marcus nodded. Then I'll remind you what humans are. He threw off his cloak and charged. Their clash sent waves of energy through the field. Voidkin forces stumbled. The people watched in awe. Each strike from the Varkon edge wasn't just power. It was history. Every blow echoed with the memory of human courage, of Alara's sacrifice, of forgotten heroes who gave everything for peace. In one final burst, Marcus plunged the sword through the commander's chest. The shadow exploded into light. Silence followed. Then, cheers. The warships in the sky began to retreat. The people had won, not through fear or numbers, but because one human made the sword believe again. Later that night, the temple was rebuilt with lightstone and vines. A new statue was placed in front of the Varkon edge of Marcus Rayne, standing not with the sword raised high in victory but held low in peace. Alyra announced, "He is no conqueror. He is our first guardian." Zira stood beside him, whispering, "The galaxy will never forget today." Marcus smiled, tired but alive. "It's not about being chosen," he said softly. "It's about choosing to stand." The new legend begins. The fires had cooled. The blood had dried. The Voidkin ships had vanished like a nightmare fleeing the morning sun. But something still hung in the air above planet Zenthra, a silence filled with awe. In every city across the planet, people whispered a new name. Marcus Rayne, the human, the guardian of the flame. Children painted his face on walls. Elders lit candles around replicas of the sword, and aliens who once laughed at humans now bowed their heads in respect. But Marcus? He stood alone, far from the crowds. On the highest cliff overlooking Harak, he gazed at the stars. The Varkon edge rested beside him in the soil. It pulsed softly, no longer glowing with battle fire, just quiet warmth. Zira climbed the rocky path behind him, holding a fresh cloth and a pack of food. "You've been up here all day," she said gently. Marcus smiled, but it was tired. "Just thinking." "About what?" He looked to the sky. "That they're not done. The Voidkin. That this might only be the start." Zira sat beside him. "The people believe in you." "That scares me more than the war," he whispered. She looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because belief can become a crown. And I don't want to be a king. I just wanted to help." She smiled. "Then maybe that's why the sword chose you." Down in the temple, High Priestess Alyra was meeting with leaders of dozens of alien tribes, races that hadn't spoken in centuries. Now they discussed treaties, alliances, and rebuilding, but one seat remained empty, Marcus's. "He refuses to rule," Alyra said simply. The Torkin leader, a fierce horned warrior, frowned. "Why?" "He has the sword. He has the people." "Because he understands something we forgot," she replied. "Power is not meant to be owned. It is meant to be shared." The room fell silent. Then the smallest alien elder stood. "Then we will build a council, not for Marcus, but because of Marcus." Meanwhile, deep underground, beneath the temple's oldest roots, the sword hummed once more. A wall shifted. A new chamber opened. Inside, a forgotten beacon lit up and began to transmit far across the stars, to a place unknown, a place ancient, place where others waited. Back on the cliff, Marcus felt the vibration through the sword's hilt. "It's starting again," he said softly. Zira looked at him. "What is?" He touched the sword gently. "The galaxy is waking up the same way this planet did, and I don't think the Voidkin were alone." Zira grew quiet. "But you'll fight again?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "If I must, but not just with this." He pointed to the sword. "With this," he said, tapping his chest. "With the reason." Weeks later, Marcus prepared to leave. A ship had been repaired. The same one he crash-landed in was now shining, fixed by both human and alien hands. A hybrid vessel, part Earth tech, part Zenthran crystal. He stood at the boarding ramp, the Varkon edge strapped to his back, wearing a simple coat and boots. No throne, no guards, just a man going forward. The crowd had gathered silently. Alira stepped forward and gave him a small silver emblem, the mark of the new Galactic Council. "We owe you more than words," she said. "You gave us unity." Marcus smiled and handed the emblem to a child nearby. "Then keep it safe." Zira ran up to him. "Where will you go?" "Wherever the sword points." He looked up at the stars. "There are more lost worlds, more ruins, more danger, maybe more forgotten humans." He stepped into the ship. Zira called out, "Wait." He turned. She tossed him a folded note. "For when you feel alone." He nodded and smiled. "Thank you." The ship's engines ignited and, slowly, Marcus Rayne left the world that had once mocked him as its greatest protector. In time, stories spread, not of war, but of a man who lifted a sword not to rule, but to protect. They called him many names: the Blade Bearer, the Last Rain, the Human Flame. But one name echoed across stars louder than any: the one who chose peace.